Hey everyone, so lots of people have asked me about OP-XY's MIDI capabilities, and I was also pretty curious about this because I plan on this basically being my workstation, and I want it to be the center of my setup, so I needed to figure this out sooner or later. So today I spent quite a while really kind of answering everybody's questions, testing some things out myself, taking notes, and I wanted to give you a few demos that I think showcase a bit of what it can and can't do, including some surprises for me. And this is all in the context of things that I was able to figure out, so that could change. This is also on firmware 1.0.9, and it's possible that, there's some way of doing this that I just don't know yet. So this isn't an OPZ versus OP-XY video, but I'll still compare the two occasionally because I do view XY as an upgrade of Z. So before we begin, I just want to say the two biggest limitations that affected me are that I can disable a track's outgoing MIDI, but I can't change which channel it receives MIDI on, best as I can tell. And actually, I don't think I can even turn off incoming MIDI to a channel on here, so that's a little bit unfortunate, but this is a similar limitation to OPZ, so that's why I'm not that shocked by it, just I'm not mad, I'm disappointed, you know? The second biggest limitation is that I can't control which channels or tracks are being sent out to which MIDI output. So I can't say this only goes to USB, this one goes to the 3.5mm TRS or whatever it might be, and that makes things a bit complicated for reasons that I'll explain in the TX6 section. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to connect the Keylab, which is connected through just a regular 5-pin MIDI through a USB hub that has a USB Type A 3.5mm adapter. So this is Type A MIDI. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in second to the bottom, I believe. Okay, but now that they're connected, I need to go to the global MIDI settings, which I'm going to go to right here with COM. Let's go to System. And here's the global MIDI settings. So this is where you get to decide kind of like a very, very basic filter of clock, notes, other, it's the same thing as on the field, which is there's off, in, out, or both. And so it's kind of vague, not terribly specific, and you don't get a lot of control over it. But one new thing, still getting used to this, one new thing is that you can change the active track channel. On OPZ, you can't. You can enable or disable whether channel 1 is the active track or not. Whereas here, we can set the active track to whatever we want it to be, and that makes it a bit easier because you would never be able to control the kick drum while you had this on because it would be layered with the kick drum and what you wanted to play. Kind of weird, right? So all that just to say we don't have that limitation on XY. We've got a little bit more flexibility, a little more flexibility. Something cool is that the Keylab sends out aftertouch, and it sends out velocity, and it sends out a couple other things that I'll get to in a second. So if I hold Shift and bring up the preset menu here, I'm able to go to modulation, and I can make it so that the mod wheel targets a certain parameter. Any of the four on the synth page, the envelope page, the filter page, or the LFO page. The amount that it changes it, and it's plus or minus 50. I'm also able to send aftertouch, and I'm able to send and receive pitch bend, and it's sensitive, and I can set the velocity to affect something other than just amplitude. So I'm not going to touch these yet. I'm just going to record a few chords onto here first. I'm going to make this relatively, each step is going to be a half note, so half a bar. And then I'm going to arm this for recording, and then I'm going to start recording just a few chords from the piano, from the Keylab. I thought I would play for longer than I did, but let's go ahead and just cut that off right there. So the wild thing that you probably can't hear necessarily right now is that this is recording and the engine is reacting to sustain. Okay, so to make this clear, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you when I'm holding the sustain pedal down and when I'm not. So right now there's no sustain pedal. Now the sustain pedal is held down. So it's actually responding slightly to the sustain pedal, which means you can kind of use it like a real one, right? I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting it to record that or respond to that. At this point, though, I'm going to go ahead and go back to that modulation menu here, and I'm going to add a, let's add a pitch bend target. And let's add it to, make it control the filter. Man, I'm so bad at this right now. I think the first one is cutoff. So let's go ahead and make it so that the pitch bend affects the cutoff. So let's hear what this might sound like. Okay, so we can still hear the pitch bend. And side note for everybody who just freaked out because I used the pitch bend on something that's OPZ related. So I always thought the OPZ, you had to really squish the hell out of it to get it to do any sort of pitch bending. Mine's never really worked that well. But what I learned is that I don't think it's supposed to have any give at all, because this has no give, but you can gently kind of pitch bend with it by just applying a bit of pressure or putting your whole finger or thumb on it and then just kind of rocking back and forth. And it will record that with actually quite a bit of precision. So watch this. Oh, I guess I won't be doing this, will I? Okay, so I think that was pretty decent as far as like the resolution of it goes, not as far as like the artistry of it. So I'm going to try to remember what undo is, and I can't remember if it's shift and record or shift and stop. Shift and record, I guess. Yep. So I think I just undid that pitch bend. So it responds to internal and external pitch bend, and we'll pass that on to another synth if you want. So let's layer that with one of the OPZ's sounds. Here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to pull up the chords track, and we're going to randomize, I guess. Okay, so that's what we're going to have layered with this sound. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull up the config menu, which is under the project settings. So project config. Side note, it doesn't autosave, so you're going to want to manually save. Like, it does sort of autosave, but they recommend you use the manual save because it will keep a record of the projects, but that's another video. So let's go to the config settings, and let's go down here to MIDI. So we're talking about track 4, so I'm going to scroll down to track 4, and I'm going to set this MIDI out to channel 8, which is the chords channel that I just set up on OPZ. Okay, so we have that set up. But we don't have the MIDI connected yet. So what I'll do is I'm going to go here, and I'm going to hit COM. I'm going to hit Devices, and then I'm going to just tap the button on the back of OPZ that advertises it. Ignore the Velcro on the back, I'm just weird. So I've paired them now. I want to make sure that it accepts and sends notes and other, but notice that it doesn't send the clock. And that's because they think that there's too much latency to be sending a clock over Bluetooth, or it's not reliable enough, I think. All right, so let's go ahead and go back here. And I'm going to layer this voice now by making it so that okay, so we're going to have to make this a little louder so we can actually hear the OPZ part of it. Okay. So now if I hit play, this OPZ synth should be layered here. What if we bring in that OPZ using the auxiliary track 3 here? So that's the MIDI track. So I'm going to go ahead and it's channel 1 that I'm looking for. I'm going to go to this page. I get 2 sets of 4 parameters I get to, or CCs I get to control. I'm going to control 7, which is volume. And here I'm going to sequence it. We can make sure we can control it here. You can see, maybe you can see, yeah, it's changing over there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this pretty low. I'm going to lock that here. Then I'm going to lock this at the maximum. And then this next step a little bit lower. And then over here, we'll just have it be gradually. Actually, no. Let's make this back to 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this so that each step lasts 1 bar. You will see that this jumps all over. Okay, so we do want this to send to channel 1, and we need to make sure that that's not going to do anything on OPZ. So let's go ahead and see what happens now. So this is jumping all over, right? So one thing we can do is let's go back to that bar menu, and I'm going to increase the shape to maximum. Now watch this. One thing I'm kind of curious about how it'll react to, first of all, it resets. It doesn't smoothly transition back to the first step, unfortunately. That's one limitation I've found. And then the second thing I want to test while I'm here is what happens if I have it hold this step 4 times. Interesting, so it's just going to repeat that, similar to if I pulsed it 4 times. Okay. But I just wanted to show that you can control these CCs smoothly, especially if you're willing to use that shape function. But here's the downside. What I mentioned at the very beginning was that I can't make it only send this channel to the USB MIDI, and so as a result, I'm actually just going to go ahead and disable the MIDI functions on TX6 because I want to be able to use channels 1 through 6 without having it change the mixer here. So now we just have audio going into TX6. So we already have OPZ connected through the Bluetooth MIDI, right? Let's also sequence a couple of drum tracks. Now, we've already used this track here. And for now, let's just pretend like this is being used to sequence something else because I have turned it off from here. I'm going to go to the instruments page. I'm actually going to go to the first track, and then I'm going to change the engine and then go back to drum so that we have a blank drum kit. And here's what I'll do. I'm going to send MIDI from XY to the Z's kick track, and then I'm going to layer that sound with a one shot I have on in my XY library. Let's make sure that it is configured so that track 1 is going to send to channel. We want it just to send to channel 1 if we're doing the kick. Yeah, let's just keep it with that. So let's find a kick that we want. Let's just do this. This will not fit. I'm demonstrating this stuff. I didn't really plan this ahead of time. Let's actually layer this then. So what note is it? It is this C right here. I'm going to pull up the library and let's find one of their kits. Let's do one of the kicks from here. We can't hear it because it's layering with OPZ, so I'm going to turn that off for a sec. Cool. And just so that competes noise-wise, let's go ahead and turn up the preset volume. And go to here and increase the percussion gain. Okay, so maybe I should have actually planned out like a song beforehand because this is just literally going to get messier with the other stuff I've got planned. So let's just roll with it and hope that this doesn't become too much of a mess. For the snare and hi-hat, let's use the external engine to sequence them. So the snare is going to be on channel 2, and then the hi-hat is going to be on channel 3. I always get confused. So let's just go ahead and just sequence the OPZ on that. And let's just add a snare. Oops. Here's the last thing that I'll do. I am initializing all the voices on SimplexFM, and I'm going to put it in poly mode, and it's going to basically sound just like a generic synth, but I'm going to have it best as it can keep up with these notes here. So the way I'm going to try to do this, at least, is I'm going to link this track to channel 5 here, or track 5 here, and on this track I will put external sending to 5. But I don't have this connected through TRS MIDI. There is a trick here. You have to go to COM, and then you're going to have to, I never remember what you changed to what. You're going to have to make sure that this is set to MIDI and not like audio or anything like that, because you can't change it once it's plugged in. So let me connect this from the output over to the MIDI in on the metaconformer / SimplexFM, and now there we go. Well, if it's going to be stubborn, that's fine too. We'll just hear this out of our left ear, I guess. No, that's not fair. Let's do split here. Okay, so I have this connected now, and we're able to hear SimplexFM over here. And so this should be the same, and it should play the notes from here. Things got a bit stuck there for a second, actually. So it seemed like I had set things up right, but it wasn't working, and then suddenly Simplex shot out a bunch of notes. So I assume that they were delayed here. Yeah, at least we got it, on video. So I'm going to just remove that chord progression from before. Man, I keep forgetting that things are muted. So I'm going to turn off the send from track 4. So we just have it linked to track 5. And that's making it so this engine is playing along here. And if we solo them, we can hear that just drums are coming from OP-Z. Just synths are coming from Simplex. And then on XY, we have the keys, and we've got a couple drums, but just really the kick, right? So we saw before that XY can send out some kind of smooth LFOs, but let's explore that a little bit more here. So I'm going to turn off all these controls except for 10 and 11. And those are going to be controls for Simplex. And so what I could do is I could make this here, and let's make it go all the way up here. And in the meantime, let's bring this up here and have it go down there. And I'm going to make this, each of these are going to last a bar. And I will smooth out the shape of it. So let's see what this looks like and sounds like. Let's just have it go there. Now, you would hope that you could do this with the LFO, but I haven't actually found a way of getting the LFO to go, because it also just doesn't even really have the right marks yet, like the right labels yet. So we have, if we just have value here, it's still just going to ask me to send. So let's try to go to the envelope, which would be the second page. And so I'm going to assume that this first one, attack, is going to be the equivalent of the very first parameter here. So let's just make sure it's as fast. I'm not seeing the LEDs change here. I'm not hearing any change. And so I just don't think that anything's really happening with that. I don't think the LFOs are working right now, but I might be mistaken. And the cool thing is that if I wanted to, I could go ahead. Let's add some notes here so we can. Oh wait, let's not do that. Let's just clear all this. So I'm going to clear all. And what I will do is I'm going to make this a little bit longer, and I'm going to do the same thing as before. Have these two parameters let's have them kind of offset a bit. So let's go here, make sure that's 0, up to 127, and then back to 0 at the end. Oh, right. There's a glitch where when you're step recording it, it only goes up. Anyway, let's give this a try and see what happens. Oh boy. Oops, I didn't mean to change the bank. But similarly, if you really wanted to, you could be sequencing. Let me turn this off of this mode, and let me just show you. Let me unlink those tracks. And what I will do here is I'm going to go ahead and alternate between channel 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it keeps getting stuck. Okay, very last thing I want to talk. Alright, so that's a lot, and that's all I wanted to talk about. I feel like I have a good enough hang of the XY to actually really start practicing making music and getting at the hang of like using it in my day-to-day life, and so I'm going to take some time to practice that, which means that I'm going to take a little bit of a break from these videos, at least for like a week or so, to actually practice making music on the thing. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.